For many companies, a year-end marks the end of a financial year. Thus, the year-end and the beginning of the year becomes the peak period for outstanding wages, and wage claims have become a major phenomena of the season. 2023 has been a much tougher year for China's economy than any year over the past 2 decades. It was a year of bad news: slowing GDP growth, record youth unemployment, continued flight of foreign investment, weak exports and currency, and a crisis in the real estate industry. So, at present, China is seeing more and more wage claims and rights protection movements. This is a photovoltaic company in a northern city that owes wages to migrant workers. They are defending their rights with a banner outside the company. This is southwest China. Migrant workers are owed wages. They held banners to petition for their rights and plead to the government to help them. This is eastern China. Workers gathered at the entrance of the construction site with A4 paper on their bodies to demand their wages. Here in Shenzhen, a developed city in the south, a migrant worker was carried away covered in carpet by the hotel employees as he demanded his wages in front of the hotel. Migrant workers are arguably the lowest class of workers in China, the most disadvantaged. Therefore, they have no bargaining power and no protection in the labor market. Many Chinese migrant workers have their salaries owed to them until the end of the year. They hope to get paid at the end of the year so that they can go home and have a good Chinese New Year. These workers are in an unfortunate and passive position where their salaries are in arrears. They are forced to accept a reduced amount when settling the account. For example, if they were promised 100 yuan at the beginning, they are now offered 90 yuan. The workers have no choice but to accept it given how tough it is to get their money back. The worst thing is that some workers end up not getting anything back. China is having a particularly cold winter this year. Here in a city in Guangdong province, workers slept in front of their companies in the freezing weather to collect their wages, using a small loudspeaker to play their demands on a loop. Pay me back my hard-earned money. Pay me back my hard-earned money. In the meantime, the workers approached the government departments, including the Labor Bureau, but to no avail. A passerby inquired about their situation.
7、8度的天气，躺在外面，拿着被盖这里。哎，你好，我要采访一下呢。干嘛？
What did you do at the construction site? I was a painter. What is the name of the company on top of your contractor? I don't know. Are you a laborer? Yes, I am. How much does the contractor owe you? About several 100,000 RMB. What is the progress of collecting the money? It's been a month, but no one cares. Is the law enforcement team useless? How did they reply to you? I don't know. It's useless anyway. No one cares about us. In the entire society, it's not only the contractors in the construction industry or other employers of migrant workers who don't keep their word. Under the culture of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, the powerful and influential people in all walks of life don't abide by the contracts, and there are no corresponding binding measures for them. Very often, contractors, for example, are also victims. In the complicated triangular debt relationship, they are unable to collect their accounts receivable either, particularly if their clients are government departments that owe them money. These private companies or bosses are just as desperate as the migrant workers. In a central Chinese city, a private company in Henan province hung a sign on a road saying it was facing bankruptcy and couldn't repair the road in time. The sign reads, "The roads we invested in and built have been open for more than 5 years, but because the local government owes us a huge amount of money, we can't repay our bank loans, and we can't maintain the roads in a timely manner. So the company is on the verge of bankruptcy and can't operate normally. We ask for your understanding for any inconvenience we may cause the public." Another local company put up a sign that read, "The civic center that we invested in and built has been in operation for nearly 3 years. However, due to the huge amount of money owed by the government, we are no longer able to pay our bank loans and utility bills for water, electricity, and heating. Our company is on the verge of bankruptcy, and we can no longer run a normal business. Please forgive us for any inconvenience we may cause to the public thereafter." Over the past few years, as more and more workers have to fight for wages owed to them, the government has begun to address the increasing number of protests and strikes. In 2021, the government and the official media introduced the term malicious wage claims, collectively and in a high-profile manner. Previously, a city put out the term malicious wage claims. It defines several types of aggressive behavior, including holding banners, blocking roads, obstructing traffic, barring entrances and exits, and other means of affecting social order, climbing buildings, storming construction sites, and other means of obstructing management, and mobbing and blocking government offices, all of which would be punishable by imprisonment. Of course, this hasn't stopped workers from defending their rights or from maliciously claiming owed wages. As the economy continues to slide downward, by the end of 2023, it's not just migrant laborers who are demanding their wages. More workers from the upper level of the social hierarchy have to join the rank of collecting owed wages. On December 19, 2023, in a hardware factory in Dongguan City, Guangdong Province, more than 100 workers demanded their salaries on the roof of the building, and the boss was suspected to have run away with the money. On December 18, 2023, in Chongqing City, Sichuan Province, an internet enterprise named Meet the Little Yellow Duck defaulted on wages and overtime pay, triggering a strike by the employees. More than 100 employees went on strike at the company's headquarters and were threatened by the company. The next day, several employees were warned by the police. On December 20th, the workers went on strike and held a protest meeting in front of the factory. In addition to denouncing malicious wage claims, officials have also set up blacklists of workers in an attempt to suppress workers' efforts to defend their rights. In the past 2 years, several courts in the economically developed Zhejiang province have published a list of abnormalities of workers defending their rights. Included in the list are those who have filed frequent complaints and demanded labor arbitration. For example, those who have filed 10 times in 3 years, those who have filed 3 cases in 3 years, or demanded wages 3 to 5 times in 1 year, and those who, according to the courts, have caused serious adverse social impacts. Workers on the list will be scrutinized and even punished in terms of job search and labor rights. Over the years, these blacklists of workers have been shared among enterprises and within industry associations. The official blacklists have done little to provide an effective path for victims other than intimidating workers who are desperate to defend their rights. In 2018, China's Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security established a blacklist of businesses that have defaulted on the payment of wages to migrant workers or companies that withhold wages from migrant workers up to a certain amount or cause a bad social impact. However, on the website of the Credit China National Information Center, only 179 enterprises and natural persons, mostly small and medium-sized enterprises or contractors, were listed for the year of 2020. This figure is far too small. As early as 2015, the private media Non-News had compiled an incomplete record of workers' mass incidents in that year. It mainly consisted of construction workers claiming wages, a total of 10,425 cases. Of these, more than 5,000 took place right before the Chinese New Year, and the protests were triggered mainly by unpaid wages, among which thousands of workers were arrested for demanding their wages. You may ask, can't the workers go through legal channels to solve the problem? If the workers take the legal route, according to China's dispute resolution system, labor disputes must be adjudicated by the Labor Arbitration Commission, and only after rejecting the decision can they file a lawsuit with the People's Court. Of these, the mediation period is routinely 15 days. Arbitration is generally 45 days. Complex cases should be concluded within a maximum of 60 days, and access to the courts can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years. The sheer complexity and technicality of the process leads to the loss of time, financial and mental costs, which are already enough to discourage workers. In particular, workers are required to bear a great deal of the burden of proof, such as proof of labor relations, working hours, and so on, which, for workers in vulnerable situations, especially rural workers, make it almost impossible to obtain the kind of complicated evidence required by the courts. The party with the resources and capital can mobilize the resources of the entire organization, including time, money, and the legal profession, to fight against the isolated individual worker. But the worker needs to support himself first before fighting a lawsuit on the side. In today's China, who the vulnerable groups are can be clearly seen in the disputes that take place in the streets. Here, in a Walmart in northeast China, a delivery guy accidentally touched a man's shoes while pushing a shopping cart. After the guy apologized, the man continued to be relentless, demanding that the guy shine his shoes, but not by hand. Both men were taken away by the police. As we enter the end of 2023, what makes things difficult for the CCP is that wage collectors and human rights defenders are no longer just the most disadvantaged migrant workers who are at the social bottom. Many petitioners for wages have emerged from all walks of life, in all sectors, adopting the same method of so-called vicious wage claims. Here is another case that just happened. On December 26, 2023, a number of healthcare workers in a hospital in Sichuan province were suspected of sitting collectively at the hospital windowsill, signaling their intention to jump off the building if necessary in order to claim their wages. According to the online video, there were about 10 people in white gowns by the windowsill on the 4th floor of the hospital, while firefighters laid down air mattresses on the ground. There were a large number of onlookers. This hospital responded to the media on that day, denying the story of unpaid wages. But as to why there were healthcare workers gathering by the window, the staff said the hospital leadership was dealing with it. She had no specifics, but the hospital would explain it in the future. This company, Royally Corporation, is the pioneer of folding screen cell phones. It has been in arrears for a year, with a cumulative amount of more than 40 million yuan, or US 5.6 million. On December 25th, more than 50 employees went on strike at the company to demand their wages. According to an employee at the site, there were only about 200 to 300 active employees left in the company. Most of them are engineers maintaining the production line equipment, and the only business left in the company is the basic screen assembly business, which earns only enough to pay for Social Security. As a fully flexible screen maker, Royally claims that its innovative ultra-low temperature non-silicone process integration technology is the light of domestic production that breaks the monopoly of South Korea's Samsung. The private sector aside, many local governments are now saddled with huge debts, and their purse is empty. In this city in Guangdong province, at the end of the year, the streets are littered with garbage. Why? The local government owed the sanitation workers 3 months' wages, which led to a mass strike by the sanitation workers. On December 12th, a screenshot of a circular about the Jiangxi provincial government's decision to adjust the salaries of institutions and organizations across the province was widely disseminated on WeChat, Douyin, and overseas social media. The notice said the provincial government had announced a policy of lowering salaries across the board. The Jiangxi Provincial Department of Finance told local media that it hadn't received any similar notices. and that the salary reduction news circulating online was a rumor that they had reported to the Internet Information Office. But Chinese netizens don't buy the denials from the Jiangxi Finance Department, citing examples of government agencies or enterprises related to the government that have been cutting salaries for a while now. Interviews by the Radio Free Asia reporter also confirmed that Chinese netizens claim that public employees in Jiangxi province have already had their salaries cut by 20 to 30%. The video, which appeared in December, showed a bus in Henan province. A white banner attached to the bus reads, 16 months of driving a bus, no wages, return my hard-earned money. I want my hard-earned money back. At the end of the year, it's not just wage earners who stand in tears in the cold wind. There are all kinds of human rights defenders, and one relatively large group is the victims of China's real estate market. Here are the owners of a building in Nanjing defending their rights at a construction site where illegal construction work has led to cracks in the homes.
Boycott shady building materials. Protect the well-being of my home. Boycott shady building materials. Protect the well-being of my home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 department don't care. The people's property is damaged. The government doesn't care. We have old and young at home.
Has the audience noticed that A4 paper has become a common item in the human rights movement in China? On December 26, the owners of a rotten-tail building in Xi'an went to the Minsheng Bank to defend their rights. The bank's entrance was plastered with A4 paper with curses on it, accusing Minsheng Bank of lending illegally and failing to remit 657 loans totaling US $78 million. That is the construction money to the supervisory account. Usually, the emergence of a rotten-tail building is due to the fact that the construction money amassed from the down payment of the loan borrowers, etc., has been misappropriated and consumed in advance instead of being reserved in the supervisory account, which ultimately results in a rotten-tailed building. Wage claimers climbing up to the roof of a building are considered maliciously claiming wages. Owners of these rotten-tail buildings also climbed up to the roof of the building. Would they be considered maliciously defending their rights? This year's winter in northern China is particularly cold, and this neighborhood has substandard fire protection facilities and ruptured pipes without heating. A large number of owners held banners to defend their rights. The staff who arrived later ripped off the banners, angering the protesters. Heated clashes and pushing and shoving broke out between the owners and the staff. According to the Voice of America, a researcher from China Labor Bulletin said, "There are just too many rights protests. Every week there are 2 to 3 cases in each district, most of which involve less than 100 people. They also fail to attract attention in society, so the government can't deal with them one by one." China Labor Bulletin, based in Hong Kong, is a non-governmental organization dedicated to promoting and defending workers' rights in China. A commentator on current Chinese affairs said the government didn't dare and couldn't crack down on the workers' rights movement. He told VOA, "There are just too many cases of rights protests, so the government doesn't dare to crack down too hard because if the workers turn their backs on them, it's tough for them to do anything about it. And now that the local governments can't sell their land, their income is decreasing. Plus, they have borrowed a lot of money in the past 10 years. Half of their financial income has to be used to pay back the interest, and they can't even pay the salaries of the police. And the 5 police stations have been merged into 2, and they are not as arrogant now as they were in the past."